Hey, thanks for listening. Please subscribe to our newsletter at theproductporch.com for notifications on the latest episodes and exclusive content. Just because you put numbers in it doesn't make it objective.
No.
We put scores.
Yeah, that one's 102.
Yeah, obviously, that's the truth now.
Right.
Welcome to the Product Porch with Ryan Cantwell, Joe Golly, and me, Todd Blaquiere. Today, we continue our conversation on making decisions when everything feels uncertain. We provide a rubric for making decisions, discuss what to do with unclear evidence, and how to cheerlead your recommendation. Now settle in, folks, because on the Product Porch, every topic is a product topic. Full disclosure, there is a Knicks game going on right now. And so I will occasionally look at my phone and see how we're doing.
Yeah, because last night I got the gut punch of my Cleveland Cavaliers taking the loss to the Detroit Pistons. So
Come on,
it was
Cleveland.
A little rough.
Come on, Cleveland.
I know. So it's great to be back here on the porch because if you remember what we were talking about, we've gotten these requests where people walk up and say, go build this. Mm-hmm. And they feel uncomfortable. And I think that's for a reason. It's not because we couldn't build the thing we were asked to build, but because we really weren't sure on what success means.
Yep.
Right? So
yes, sir.
These requests can sound clear without actually being clear. And I think that's why they feel so uncomfortable. And that's where we started part one of our conversation last time out. And we decided that if you don't understand the outcomes, you start filling in the blanks yourself and expectations start to get misaligned.
Yeah.
So it's like somebody says, go meet me in New York. And one person goes to Manhattan and the other one goes to Buffalo.
Right.
So why
I
they
don't
go
know
to
what's
Buffalo?
wrong with that second person that goes to Buffalo, but
They love wings. They like buffalo wings. I don't know.
but technically that is New York, correct?
Yes, this is both in New York. And in product, that's the danger. You can build exactly what you're asked for and still miss the mark because you never got clear on the outcome behind the request. And that's really the bigger issue here, right?
Correct.
As we dug into it in part one, we were talking a little bit about slowing down long enough to ask, what is the business actually trying to achieve here? I am being asked this thing. What do they want to do? Like, what will we impact? And if we're looking and understanding that internal ask, we're still not done because there's also the part we need to answer and connect that business outcome to a customer outcome. And we've even seen when mismatches there happen. Todd, I still use your analogy. Product strategy is connecting a business outcome to a customer outcome. That's it. And we've seen that breakdown before. So if we get aligned on outcomes first, and even when we do that, we still don't get certainty. We just get a starting point.
Correct. Well, we get a starting point and we get an ending point.
Oh,
we know where we need to get. We know where we need to get to.
It's all the work in the middle. Yeah. And that really sets us up for what I want to talk about with you today. Because once we understand those outcomes, the next question has to be, what must be true for this idea to actually work?
Yes.
What is the biggest assumption hiding underneath it? And we talked a little bit about that last time. And I loved your story about the monkey on a pedestal speaking Shakespeare.
Yeah.
So for everyone who is now intrigued by monkeys on pedestals speaking Shakespeare, they can go back and listen to part one because that's what we kind of extend now and go a little deeper. How to find the biggest, hairiest assumption, test it, and make the call when the answer still isn't perfectly clean. And then how do we make that recommendation and motivate the organization to action to get to the end? We knew the starting point, like you said. We know the end point. We got to get there.
Right. Yeah, that's a good summation of what we talked about in episode one and then what we're going to talk about here. One of the first things I found to be very helpful, I think you mentioned it as defining what success is. You need to have a way to define what is success going to mean here. So I know the outcome that I want to achieve, but how am I going to evaluate whether or not this thing will achieve that outcome? Because that's going to help me make a decision. You know, this just came up today when I was reviewing some designs. We're doing a redesign of one of our core functions, actually. And our UX designer was reviewing it. She's showing us many options. It was very cool. She's very good at what she does. Very cool. Lots of cool designs. But I stopped for a moment because we were talking so much about the designs. I said, wait. can we take a step back? Why are we redesigning this? I know that all of us get the ick from this workflow. You've talked about product taste before, when the UX just doesn't, and good product taste, when the UX just isn't working. And so I say, I understand we got the ick, but why are we changing this? Why do we get the ick?
Mm-hmm.
Once we started talking about the reason why, it became a lot easier to select which design we believe would win. Now we're going to go test those designs in the wild anyway. One of the things that I love doing, I don't know if you've done this, Ryan, I love making a rubric when I have a big decision to make.
Heck yeah. Okay.
Yes. And I like to get alignment from my stakeholders, my peers, leadership team, these kind of things. I want to get alignment because if we're all aligned on the rubric, how we're going to make the decision, then we can make it, right? Like, again, let's go to New York. Maybe if we had a rubric that said, let's go to New York and land somewhere where, we can see a Broadway show and watch the Knicks play Madison Square Garden.
Yeah. Now we're within a miles error, not states away.
I don't know. Would it be helpful if I gave you some examples of rubrics that we have used? Some rubric criteria.
I would love to hear your rubrics because I am sure people do this, but everyone might do it a little bit differently. And I can't wait to hear what you use.
Well, I'll give you an example that's come up recently. So the outcome in mind is we're exploring new revenue. Let's just say that. We're looking for new revenue opportunities. So this isn't necessarily a copy paste rubric you would use for everything. But in the context of new revenue, I think it makes sense. What we did is we set categories, then we defined the category with specific criteria, and then we created weights and we aligned as a team on them. Now, I'll say this, what we landed on was not what I originally brought to my team, but we worked it around a little bit. But it was a nice starting point, and then we found our weights in it. So here are the categories that we had. For example, economic attractiveness. We want new revenue. Seems like an important category. Customer pain and demand. Some criteria included in that is like density, intensity, frequency, evidence of pull, buyer priority, right? Right to win. So it may be really economically attractive. There may be really intense customer pain, but can we win? Do we have a right to win? What's our differentiation? What's the access that we have to the buyer, to the channel, those kind of things? Strategic assets we can leverage or competitive intensity. What's the switching barriers in the market? And then we had two more, feasibility and operating fit. So we combined those. Originally, I think I had them separately. We combined them into one category. This is where we're looking at technical complexity, data integration. We're looking at support burden. Is this going to require new sorts of operations and functions and resources? And then time to impact. That last one is things like time to validate, time to launch, time to revenue, time to scale, multiple times, right? It's like, how long is it going to take us to hit these milestones we think in this space? And I gave you some criteria. I never mentioned like economic criteria. I'll just tell you that. When we have like TAM and SAM, revenue potential, willingness to pay, pricing, margin. So anyway, these 5 criteria, then we weighted them. I'm not going to go through the weights with you.
Yeah.
But we went over the weights as a team. And at least now I know. So we're actually evaluating 6 different opportunities that will be put into this rubric at the end to help us score them against each other, right? So give us a little bit of comparison against it. And I do actually add a modifier for confidence because I like doing that. Sometimes we have great evidence, sometimes we don't. So I like to add a confidence modifier. Anyway, is that a lot like what you've used in the past, Ryan? You've done similar things?
Yeah, I have done similar things, and some maybe use different terminology for some of the things you're doing. Some things that I was thinking, we used I'll call it strategic fit. So every year we'd have like our strat planning session, and there were like the big things. We'd always want to say, okay, which one is going to help us achieve that? How aligned, basically, is it? And some of the other things I think we're pretty much on the mark with that you were looking for. But I want to issue a note of caution as well, Todd.
Oh, I'm excited.
Yes, because I have seen situations where I was using a rubric like that, and product manager A would fill it out this way using this criteria, and product manager B would fill out the same rubric, but they were miscalibrated. So they would give this one a score of a 5 for the revenue category, but a 5 to them meant $3 million, and a 5 over here meant $500,000. Yeah.
Correct. So you know what's interesting? We do this crazy thing with our product team. Our product managers all meet together and they talk about how they're tracking in their discovery together.
Oh, blasphemy. Product managers talking to each other?
It's crazy.
That's right. I always say product management, you deal with everybody but it's the most lonely role in the world because you never get to talk to other product managers.
So this is the epiphany that we had. We've done a lot of discovery as a team, and we focused on it a lot. And as we were going into some of this new revenue stuff, which is really big exploration. I know every decision is not like this. Some decisions are scoped a little smaller. We're talking about future decisions, but I thought I would use this as an example. But the one thing we realized, and something that's brought us this, we're like, wow, we're repeating a lot of effort and we're solving problems in different places. Why are we doing that?
Mm-hmm.
So we meet on a regular basis. It's weekly right now, but we meet on a regular basis. The team comes together and they say, hey, here's what I'm seeing. They talk about their monkey. They talk about where they're getting stuck so that we can help them block each other. But then we're going over this data together. Now, one of the big important rules, and I know this isn't about making a decision, but I'll just throw this as a side note. One of the other reasons why we do this is because I don't think that the product manager success should be based on whether or not the decision is yes or no. And so I don't want the product manager to feel that like I have to get a yes or it's bad.
Right.
So if we do this together, it's our team investigating problems, despite who's leading what stream, doesn't matter. It's our team. And we're all trying to eliminate no's so that we can find the yes. Whenever we do find a yes, it's a representation of the team success, not an individual product manager.
No,
but it does help with what you said, Ryan, with getting some collaboration and alignment across the rubric.
Yeah, because not only have I seen some conflict between product manager A and product manager B, but I'll just throw it out there. This isn't a prioritization podcast, but when the operations team rocks in and says, hey, I've got this tooling initiative that we need to run through immediately. And it's like, whoa, you want to do that, and I want to do this, and this other product manager wants to do this. How do we compare those things? These rubrics can sometimes give us a way to do that.
Right. Yes, absolutely. I'll share one more thing, then we'll move on from the rubric. But as we're establishing this, you've heard me say this before, Ryan. Just because you put numbers in it doesn't make it objective.
No.
We'll put scores.
Yeah, that one's 102.
Yeah, obviously that's the truth now. It's not supposed to be that. If you the more the reason for the rubric is helping you align on how you're going to make your decision. It's helping you ensure you're getting the right data. So everyone's trying to get that same data for you, like you said, Ryan, so we can compare it a little better. And then we can look at it together. Because what I found is when you're focused on that thing that might make your idea break, and you're tackling the rubric in this rigorous fashion, I have found that often you begin to eliminate something even before you're done. There's no reason to run the cycle all the way to the end. As soon as you find what, this isn't going to work and this is not going to win, you can stop.
And that's what it should do. It's not about the exercise of filling out the rubric and doing all the things. It's about getting to a yes or a no the fastest you can. Okay, so finding the monkey. Okay, so let's put a label on the monkey. The monkey's wearing a t-shirt, Todd. You know what that t-shirt says? Biggest assumption.
Okay.
Biggest assumption.
That's right. I like that.
Yeah. So what we're talking about when we say the monkey is the biggest, baddest thing that could cause your entire thing to fall apart, right? What have you found as good ways to expose that? Because there's lots of assumptions. I mean, for goodness sake, you could listen to our episode on assumptions everywhere. But how do you find the what?
We should do an entire episode on tiny axis discovery. A process that Dean Peters and I know Dean's been on the show a couple times, that Dean Peters and I made together when we were at IQVIA. I use it. I use tiny axis discovery intentionally. We use that term tiny because the point is, let's do this fast. There's no reason to spend 3 months in market research, quotation marks. The goal is, what are the hypotheses that are going to break us? And then how do we get there quickly? And so to your point of how do we identify that assumption, I found the most important thing is you got to get the assumptions out. Like you said, we did a whole episode on assumptions, but you got to get them on the table. And I find a systematic way, there's a couple systematic ways of doing that. One is to think about, value, viability, feasibility, and put them in those categories. Another is getting other people in the room to help you get your assumptions on the board. What do we know? What do we not know? We can go into deeper depth later. But then once you do that and you get a bunch of assumptions on the board, how certain are you about each of these? And how likely is it for your product to fail if you got it wrong? So for example, one right now that we're working on is we have an assumption that we're going to get access to a certain kind of data that we don't have today. But we need this data for this thing to work. That's the monkey. If we can't get access to that data, there is no product.
And I think, Todd, calling back to where we started in part one, where a product manager is told to go build this. And I think what makes us uncomfortable is what we're doing is not recognizing that request as loaded up with assumptions.
Yes.
We're taking it as fact. So I think what we can do is exactly what you're talking about. Start breaking it down into its assumptions. And now you can start to say which one of them is the one. So it's not about sitting there and torturing it to death to find, I got to think of the one. No, just break it down. What assumptions must be true for this to work?
Can I give you a couple of examples? So if we're calling that key assumption, the t-shirt, what did that t-shirt say again?
It was just highest risk assumption or biggest assumption.
Yeah. Highest risk assumption. I like highest risk assumption. So I'll tell you about a couple of monkeys wearing that shirt right now on our team. So one person that is actually focused on data, access to data. That's what they're focused on right now. If we don't get that data, we can't make this work. Another team member is actually focused on willingness to pay. So we actually know we've heard this problem so much. We know it's a problem. There's no question about it. We've talked about the solution with many folks. We know that, but we haven't taken time to go through the rigor. And so now going through the rigor of, hey, let's actually go see if this is a viable solution. The product manager started right away with, someone's got to pay for this. If they're not going to pay for it, this thing's dead in the water. Let's start right there.
Yeah, this is such a big one because it happens very often. We hear a painful pain. We know there is value behind it. And people are telling us that. So we get very excited. They say, great, we're going to go develop something. And then our engineers turn around and they give us something in return that is way more expensive than they were in fact willing to pay for. And we could have tested for that before we
I'll give you an
forward.
example there. So I was just talking to my neighbor. He's not a beekeeper, but he's a beekeeper hobbyist. I don't know what the terminology is for that. He has bees. He makes honey. He just gave us a big thing of honey. It's so good. Made from our backyard. He's also an inventor. He's invented many things. And so one of the things he invented and he's selling right now is these railings that fit inside the box that keeps the bees. I don't know the terminology for any of this, but he's building these. He was showing this to me on his phone and he had them in different colors. I said, that's really cool. You made them in different colors. That's awesome. He's like, yeah. What we did is actually we took these to an event. We had all the colors and we gave them a rubber band. We said, put the rubber band on your favorite color. Imagine you're leaving here with $20 and you're going to buy one. What color would you buy? And so they went and they put rubber bands on all of it. And then I asked him at the end, I said, have you started selling? Yeah. He's like, we just started selling. I said, okay, I would love to know. Cause he said there was an even distribution across the colors. It was pretty cool. I said, great. I would love to know once you start selling it, tell me what the distribution along the colors is. I can't wait.
Because the say and do ratio goes out of whack. Because everyone will say, oh, I love the colors so much. And then all of a sudden, everyone's going to buy black.
Yes. So I can't wait to see what actually happens. I did tell him the Sony story about them doing that with Walkman.
Yes.
And everyone choosing black after they said they choose orange. He said he got it. And he said, yeah, we'll see. He's like, they'll probably end up picking 4. There'll probably be like 4 colors. It won't be all of them. And I said, yeah, let's see what they are. But to that point, that's an example of an assumption that he has, right? And he built a test for it. He built a test to use rubber bands to try to figure it out. Another test is going to be when he actually goes to sell them and see what they actually buy. Now, luckily, this test doesn't break his product, right? Whether they buy blue or black doesn't matter.
Nope.
What it will do is it will define his production line, though, right? How he determines how to build. And I don't know the specifics of his supply chain. So I don't know if he's producing them ahead of time or on demand, but it could have an impact there.
Absolutely. So testing for these things, now granted, your beekeeper neighbor's colors probably isn't the highest risk assumption. It's not the monkey, faces.
No.
But if he turned around and said, okay, would you buy these things for $500,000? And people say, are you kidding me? Or if he turns around and said, I can sell you these things for $20, and he can manufacture them for $5. So all of a sudden it's like, now I see that I have just de-risked my assumption and therefore can proceed. But if you invalidated it, that now people won't pay any more than $10. Sorry, I got to stop here. Next thing.
Right. And I think we transitioned well into the next part of this, which is really making sure you're getting the data in the right kind of way.
Yeah.
Right. And so we're giving an example there of, hey, there's a difference between stated intention and observed behavior. So whenever you can, observe the behavior.
Right.
And so actually, I'll tell you how we're figuring out if we can get that data or not. We went and asked for it. And that's why I told my product manager who's getting stuck a little bit. He's like, well, I'm trying to get these meetings. I said, don't even get the meetings. Just ask for it.
Mm-hmm.
Send the request to the partner saying, hey, I'd like to have access to this data. Trying to get it by, pick a date, June 1st. Make it aggressive, make it urgent. If they're never going to give it to you, they'll tell you, oh, we're not going to give that to you. Or they might say, yes, but you have to pay for it. Yes, but you have to trade us for it. Or they might just say, yeah, here you go. And great, you can move on. So it's always, it's funny is sometimes we go through the most random ways to try to get to the answer when the simplest ways and the most direct ways is the best. Just make them make a decision.
Right. I always say, look for commitment. You've got to get them to give you something. And what I would do, while it wasn't always monetary, like, would you pay me for this? It was like, I would ask for, would you sign up to be a pre-order? Would you sign up to be a beta tester? Would you give me something? And that would
ask
show
for the
me,
email. Just ask for the email.
Give me your email address. I want to get in touch with you.
If they sign up, that's some observed behavior, showing more intent.
Intention, yes, and seeing that intention. Yeah. But another thing I want to be caution people about here, Todd, and because I've seen teams that I've worked with make this mistake where they go try to validate. I got to be careful. They go test their assumption with people they know what answer they're going to get from. So they know, okay,
test.
The mom test. Yes. So it's, mom, do you like my new haircut? She's always going to say yes. Right. So you what you're doing is, I wasn't biased in my test. Yes, you were, by selecting a group of people to test it for you in a particular way. So you want to make sure you're just aware of what's motivating them. Do I have a good balance in observed behavior, not just from too small a set or from people who I'm friendly with, in other words.
Absolutely. And it was interesting is part of that is making sure you don't lead the witness.
Exactly.
So once you've done that, you've gotten your research, you've asked the questions the right way, and you've gathered that data. Mm-hmm. The answer is always perfectly clear, right? You just
never is perfectly clear. There's this misconception that, like, evidence is going to solve everything. The customer will just lead me directly on the path. And I think one of the biggest turning points in my product management career was understanding that I have to read between the lines and fill in the blanks. Building that muscle and understanding of, like, okay, what's happening? Why is it happening? Trying to find the unsaid and be comfortable with an observation and insight and meaning in what I'm seeing. Making the final call, saying, this is what I see and this is why I think that.
Now, we've already given some tools to make that decision. Let's see if we can come up with any others off the top. Mm-hmm. And if you have any experiences about making a tough decision, love to hear it. But like we already said, knowing the outcome, that's going to be helpful. Without the outcome, you don't know where in New York you're going, what New York you're going to, right? Having a rubric, so having some criteria is going to help you as well. Now you know how you're evaluating it. That's going to help you. Making sure you're focused on your assumptions, the riskiest one, and that you're designing tests that try to get accurate information back, not biased information. So you're doing your best to get as unbiased information as you can. So these are different tools that I've gotten. So now you have data. You have data structured against a rubric. You're trying to get to achieve an outcome. So you're comparing that data and that rubric to the outcome you're trying to see. That's going to help a lot. Is there anything else? And I mean, in this moment, when you're looking at it and you're looking at that rubric and you're like, well, 3 of these categories say yes, 2 of them say no. Are there any other tools you use at this point to help make that decision finally come to that warm and fuzzy that you can say yes or no?
So the first thing that jumps out in my mind is, well, we've had this, you mentioned a weighted scoring matrix, rubric. I would default to one of the more off-the-shelf prioritization techniques to just run a comparison against and see, does it come out the other way? And I didn't mention it before, Todd, but I got to tell you, I really appreciate in your matrix, you include a confidence measure because so few of the techniques do that. It's so important. It's really important. So I would default to maybe another prioritization technique, but I also found where I've gotten stuck in something that helps me get unstuck is recognizing that anything I'm looking at is relative.
Right.
When it's relative against the other things you're looking at. It's not that, well, maybe we shouldn't do any of these things. It's no, which one's the right thing to pursue right now?
But to your point, you're never going to have 100% confidence in your decision in these cases. If you have 60 to 70%, that's what you got. And that's when I think you have to flip the dial from being researcher, right? Critic and researcher, skeptic to cheerleader. You got to flip the dial now. Once you get it, you got 60% confidence. You're no longer researcher and skeptic. You're now cheerleader.
Yep. And that's an important shift for you to make into that cheerleader role, because now you're motivating action. You're trying to drive progress instead of trying to find the thing that is going to make it die, because we can't just always be finding the thing that's going to make it die. We need to, it's like you've climbed the mountain. Now you're in the downward slope. We got to go get to the bottom.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I tell you an interesting story about that? So I forgot my cheerleader principle one time recently. And I was meeting with our CEO about this new market we're considering entering. Mm-hmm. And we met and he said, so I know we're going to do that recommendation next week. We're going to have that meeting. Where are you leaning? What do you think we're going to end up saying? You're going to say in that meeting. And I said, I think we're going to recommend to pursue. I think we are. He goes, that does not sound very confident. You're not giving me warm and fuzzies, Todd. And I'm like, yeah. And the truth was, I was still a little bit tortured about it. And I was having that realization in the moment. So I couldn't even sell the idea. Mm-hmm. And I told him, I said, I ruined one of my own principles here. So we actually doubled down over the next 2 days. And when we explored the wedge for market entry, I couldn't identify one. That was that product sense, that thing lingering in the back that wouldn't let me get excited, was that thing saying, a lot of signs are pointing to yes, but do we have a wedge? And I couldn't find one. Mm-hmm. So we actually came back and said no. It was the right choice and we didn't. But I realized I had shot myself in the foot in that moment, because if I brought my product manager into the room a few days later and we said, yes, we want to pursue it, he would have in the back of his mind the first time I told him. And I was like, yeah, I think so, maybe. And no one wants to follow that guy into battle, right? No one's going to charge up the hill for the leader that says, hey, Ryan, maybe we should go up this hill. I think there could be something cool on the other side.
Yeah, might be nice.
You know what it reminds me of? My son and my daughter, when they were little, they have very different personalities. They're both awesome kids, very different personalities. And they'd come into a playground, and my daughter just thought everyone was her friend. She's still that way a little bit too, even though she's 16. So she'd come on the playground and she'd rub the kids and go, let's play, chase me, and just run. Like that. She had friends. My son's method looked like this. He'd walk up to kids in the playground and go, do you want to play with me? And the kid would like walk away from him and he'd feel so bad. But it was so hard to watch, because I was like, it's not that no one wants to play with you. It's that you don't even seem like you want to play. Right. No one's feeling it, bro. When your sister goes, let's play, and runs, they feel the energy. So, that's just their personality. So like,
sure.
But when it's time, when you've decided we're going to go ahead, that first moment when you tell your stakeholders about it, it's that moment on the playground. And you need to bring the energy that my daughter used to bring. You need to come in with that, let's go play. That's not the time to hedge your bets. But when you go to present it, you don't hedge your bets and say, maybe we'll win. We think we might. It could be, possibly. No. You say, this is the thing, and this is why, and we believe in it, and you go.
Right. Yeah, I love that story, because you do need to, we talked about modeling excitement behavior in our last episode, and you need to now model the right behavior for the rest of the team to get them going. I love it.
Yeah. Is there anything that you found that works particularly well there in making the recommendation? Any other tips you have for making that recommendation once you've actually done all the investigation?
Yeah. So as we're talking about a recommendation, I think this is where you can do your storytelling flex. You're trying to condense what you know. You're not trying to give them everything. It's not about overwhelming with information. In fact, that's the last thing you want to do. So if you go in with the mindset, I need to prove that my recommendation was the right one. And I'm going to give them everything. Think again.
No.
I would prefer the simplest, clearest narrative that you can tell.
Yes.
Okay.
Keep going.
So I'm going to break it down like this. Let me start from the beginning, Todd. We were asked to do X. Just this is what you told me to do. We translated it into customer value and business value. And I talk about those outcomes quickly. We saw that the riskiest assumption was this.
Monkey.
Yep. So I ran a test to validate it. I say, okay, I learned this thing as a result of the test. I didn't talk about all the people I talked to, the surveys I ran, the thing I did. This is what we learned. I go right to that. So I recommend this based upon what I learned because of that evidence. And I leave it at that.
I love that. I love that. That is a very simple framework to follow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to add one twist to it. Recently, I have found that some executive leaders have very short amount of patience and attention span.
Yes.
I'm teasing. But there's someone I know who says answer first. And I have found that I'm that way as well. My wife sometimes likes to leave me on the hook when she tells me a story and it hurts my soul. She'll be like, okay, so this morning, one was supposed to take the SATs. Well, we arrived, and when we got there, we realized there was a problem. And da-da-da, and da-da-da. And I'm like, okay.
Okay, how bad is it?
How does this story end? Did she take them? Did she not take them? Does she need to reschedule? Where are we? I'm like, oh, it's like, this hurts. So I have found executives feeling that way in meetings too. And so I'd actually push my team when they're presenting to executives to start with the answer. So I would do what you did, but I'd actually start with the first slide being, I recommend this.
This is what I recommend. Yeah, this is what I recommend.
Now let's go through why. I recommend this. Let's go through why. Because this was what I was asked to do. This was the outcome that we defined. This was the biggest problem. We validated that we could get past that, and therefore, boom. So that's the only change I would make, but I love that structure.
Yeah, keep it simple, keep it clear. And I call what you're talking about, Todd, I call that the memento narrative. Did you ever see the movie Memento by Christopher Nolan? It starts with the end.
I never did.
Oh my gosh, you need to watch it. It starts with the end. You know what happens at the end. And then the whole rest of the movie is them working up to the end.
Interesting.
And it's fascinating. So
I'm surprised I've never seen it.
Yeah, it's really good.
I gotta watch it.
Yeah.
But the other tip I'd make, especially in presenting to executives, when you go to present your recommendations, look, simple tables really work. Simple tables.
Yeah.
So when you put that rubric on the screen and it's red and green, it just has the red and green highlights.
Yeah.
They look at it and they know. So when they look at it and it's a simple rubric and it's green, 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 of course it's yes. I can tell, Or if you have, the other thing I've done is hypothesis and validate. So I have like 5 hypotheses. It's just hypothesis, 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 and it's valid or invalid. Or sometimes it's not enough information or something.
Wait, you mean you don't put the big Excel spreadsheet with the 6 sigma standard deviation of...
Oh my gosh. And sharing, and people want to, because look, think about the things that we just covered in that rubric, TAM and SAM and pricing and wedge into the market, differentiation. We have done so much. We probably have pages and pages of work.
Oh,
and
easily.
If some of that was qualitative, we have transcripts of conversations. Sometimes you just feel like I need to show my work. I tell people, have that in your back pocket. If someone wants to double click, be ready to share. But I'm telling you, you're gonna get lost in the sauce. People will get lost. Then they'll start asking questions. Wait, why'd you do that? Why'd you ask that question? Why'd you go there? And the entire time you're thinking, that's not even important. But you're the one that opened up that box.
You made it important.
Box.
Because Todd, exactly when you do that, immediately what you've done is focus on the outputs, not the outcome. And you're telling the group to do the same thing. And that is the wrong approach.
We do not want that.
Yeah. And this is what really raises a product manager's value in an organization. Like if you want your stock to go up, behave this way. It's as easy as that. Because you're now no longer just doing tasks. You are shaping bets and making real decisions that move the organization.
Agreed. Is there anything else when you hear folks, I know you've gotten that question a few times, Ryan. So have we answered it? When you hear folks ask you, how do we make a decision? when it's not always completely clear? Is there anything else that they're looking for so that we can help people when they're asking you that question?
Is there anything else? I love this push, Todd, because it is so prevalent and there's not a magic bullet. I want to just say that, make that declaration.
Yeah.
There's not like one thing you can do. However, I think there are some things that you can do to help yourself out in this situation. And that is, think about if like every poker hand has a probability whether it will win or whether it will lose. And you have other players at the table too. So you have to think about, where's my threshold for a responsible decision to move up? Where's my threshold for that? Because it's never 100%. If you seek that, you will be in perpetual discovery for the rest of your life. So it's knowing, and part of that threshold is you as an individual, your team, and your organization's appetite for risk. You should have some sense for what that appetite is, and that determines your threshold. Maybe it's even on a project by project basis. I've been put on projects where it's like, this is the like blank check, go. And so I'm more risk. We're all more comfortable with that. And that's, we were talking about outcomes earlier, Todd, in part 1 and even a little bit today. Why not even ask for what's the appetite for risk here? That's
a great question.
Yeah.
That is a fantastic question to ask. And some of that you learn over time just with the organization and team you're working with. Yeah. You'll gain a sense of that comfort level. I'm gonna add one more tip there. Now, first off, you cannot delegate the decision making to someone else. It's your decision to make.
Or a tool.
It's not going to be made for you. The tool, chat's not going to make it for you. Claude's not going to make it for you.
Right.
You got to make this decision. But we've given you all the framework for how to get the right data and how to frame it up so that at least you're not making a decision based on your gut and just based on looking at data. You're making a decision through a framework, which is helpful. Mm-hmm. The last thing I'm going to say, though, you've heard me say this before, Ryan, I like the stakeholders on my side of the desk. Rather than me presenting something and making a decision to people, bring them over.
Yeah, there you go.
Have them work with you. Mm-hmm. If you got your finance person or someone to represent the finance team helping you run the numbers in the P&L, which is what I have my product managers do. Don't show a P&L to our CFO that hasn't been reviewed by one of the analysts. That's insane.
Yeah.
Have it reviewed. You're going to feel safer there, bring your stakeholders along as you're doing this, because if you're doing that, then when you're going to make that decision, yes, you're the one making the call, but everyone's kind of with you already. Mm-hmm. They've seen that they've been on that journey. They aligned with you on the rubric. You involved them in some of your discovery. And so now you're saying, I'm recommending we're doing this. Every time I do that, you get alignment quickly. And it's not because you led the witness. It's because everyone had the full context. They don't need to debate it for 2 hours. So that will make you feel comfortable. And then you've also turned the bet, instead of being my bet, you're turning the bet into our bet.
Our bet. Yes.
And now you're not left out there hanging on a hook. Now, I know sometimes it can feel like a superhero move because, hey, if we win, it was Todd's call. But man, I'm telling you, that is not worth the risk. Much better to we did this as a team and we won as a team.
That's right. Absolutely. That's real leadership if you behave that way. And that's a good thing. All right, Todd, I think it's time for some key takeaways. What do you say?
Let's do it. I think it's great.
All right. Lay it on me. What do you got? What are you taking away from our conversation today?
My key takeaway is this. We make a lot of decisions in our day-to-day life based on gut feeling, experience, analysis that we do in our head in mere seconds. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times the risk is really low. And if it affects anyone, it's only us. So we don't worry about it. That's why we don't get an analysis paralysis when we're picking out our shirts, at least not very often. But when you're making calls for the business, the risk level is much higher. So just give yourself a framework. Don't rely on gut. Don't try to be an analysis wizard. Mm-hmm. Give yourself a framework, get that alignment. And now you're making big decisions still with a lot of risk, but you're making big decisions from a safe place.
Yep, absolutely. For me, this conversation underlines yet again that, and different people are more predisposed to this. I'm one of them, where I'm very trusting that don't take statements as fact, take them as assumptions, see the world in assumptions. So if you are handed a do this or how about this thing, it's easy to believe that like, well, they must be right. Therefore, it's true. And it's okay to be I'm not saying be overly skeptical. I'm just saying don't treat it as 100%. Everything's a sliding scale. Know what's risky and know that it's your job to de-risk it and do some testing.
But Ryan, so you were just saying...
Okay, I know what you're doing here. Todd's doing his best Joe impression because we're Joe-less today. We're Joe-less. We miss him. We got to hear him. Okay. Joe, we miss you, buddy.
Yeah, we miss you. You got to come back. People are getting tired of just hearing the two of us.
That's right.
Well, Ryan, this was fantastic. By the way, I did agree with your takeaway. Really enjoyed spending time with you again.
It is my pleasure.
And I gotta check the Knicks score. Yes, sir. Knicks are up by 15.
Oh,
all right,
wow.
It's a good night.
It's a good night. All right. Todd, we'll see you next time. It was a great conversation.
Thank you for joining us on the Product Porch. We release new episodes every 2 weeks. You can also find us on LinkedIn for more content. We offer a special thank you to AJ and Jack Blaquiere for the music. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts of this podcast are their own and do not represent nor necessarily reflect those of their employer.